As I was reading your website, I was recalling my own happenings. None were ever harmful to me, but I do sleep with the light on most of the time. I believe I have a following, whether it be the same ghost, or if I have some attraction for them. It started when I was about 4 years old. I have this imaginary friend. I named him Jingles. From what I am told, I do not recall any part of Jingles other than what I was told by my family. I made my friend Jingles so believable that everyone in my family actually started to believe there really was someone named Jingles. I would talk to him, play with him, and of course, if anything was broken or stolen, Jingles did it. If I was good and got a treat, Jingles had to get one too. Jingles remained my friend until I reached first grade and moved to a new home. While in the kitchen with my sisters and mother, a man's voice from the woods called my name. I was about 8 years old then. We all froze with our mouths, dropped to the floor, and our hearts racing. All four of us could not have imagined that someone called my name. I was young, so my mother made a joke about it and said it was forgotten. Throughout my childhood, strange things happened in this house. Images were seen out of the corner of mine and my family's eyes, but we would just chalk it up to our imaginations. Certain toys would flip in the air, stuff like that. I was scared for the moment, but never afraid to be in the house. Over the years, we have found what I believe to be cow skulls in the backyard. 2 are found, but no one on the street has any cows. We don't know where they came from. The house that I lived in as a child eventually became my home. My sister lived in an in-law apartment below me. She would always ask me what I was doing up there because she would always, even when I wasn't home, hear jumping and walking around. What makes this so strange is that once I moved out of the house, the noises stopped. After moving out of my parents' house and into my own house about 9 months ago, there seems to be extra guests. I hear voices, but can't make out what they are saying. I often hear a muzzled radio sound. I hear running water. The house is always making huge noises. However, around 4 a.m. to 5 a.m., the noises stop and the house is dead silent. Often, a cold breeze would find me, even when there is no wind. I can't explain the feeling that I'm not alone. My children, 9 years old and 8 years old, keep saying they want to move because they think the house is haunted. I don't think moving is going to solve that problem. A little background on the house I now own. It is 30 years old and a waterfront property. I found out that the owner of the home died of cancer, not in the house, but has died. There have been 11 deaths around the lake, and they have all died of the same cancer. Am I being followed? If you have any input as to these happenings, I would invite your insight. Thanks for your time. I'm a 20-year-old from Cape Town, South Africa. As yet, I've not seen anyone from my country send in any of their paranormal experiences. I have to say that I find that quite strange regarding all the haunted places we have around here. I'm not quite sure what my experience was, but I can assure you that at that time, it was absolutely terrifying. First, I have to tell you a bit about the history of the place. From what I've heard, the mountain passes were built by Italian prisoners of war, POWs, during the Second World War, and a lot of them died building those passes. There are hundreds of stories of people seeing phantom soldiers, workmen, and the additional hiker. I'm sure some of them could have real workmen, because the roads are still being built onto. The roads up there are very old and traitorously winding, and because of that, there have been many automobile accidents. Now, to get to what happened, for the last 3 years of my school career, I went to boarding school in a very small town called Rosenville. Now, I have to add that the area surrounding it is very mountainous, and to get to the town, which is situated in a valley, you have to either go through the new tailgate tunnel or go over the mountain pass. I fail to recollect the exact date on which it happened, but I do remember that it was near the end of 1996. At that time, my parents were on holiday in Europe, and my older brother by 5 years drove to Rosenville to fetch me. I had a SRC function on that evening, and he attended it with me around 10 p.m. that evening. We were both getting a bit tired and decided to rather get going for the 1.5 hour drive home. There are quite a few legends about the old mountain pass, and that evening I made a joke and asked my brother if he wanted to go check out the ghosts at the old tunnel. He gave me one of his scary evil laughs that he does whenever we talk about ghosts, and took the turnoff that leads up to the mountain. On our way up, I must confess that I was a bit nervous, but then again, I get nervous whenever someone even hints at anything remotely scary. Everything went fine, and as we went through the tunnel, my brother pressed the car hooter 3 times, as everyone does. I don't really know why you have to do it, but it's sort of a tradition amongst the people to that area. After about 5 to 10 minutes, he kept on glancing in his rearview mirror, and then he would nod or smile. I thought this was very strange and asked him what he was doing. He looked at me with a totally straight face and said that we have a young woman in the back seat and he was just chatting to her. Of course, I immediately turned around and saw absolutely nothing. I looked at him and told him to stop scaring me and that it was not funny. He held by his story and said he's not trying to scare me, but that is truly a girl in the car, and he asked me if I could not see her. Now, I'm the youngest of 3 children and the only girl, and have always had a wonderful relationship with my brothers. I would have known if he was lying. Me, scared quite stiff and not even able to breathe properly, just sat there praying that it or she would not appear to me. Finally, after about 15 minutes and a whole lot more nods and smiles, my brother told me that he had to stop to relieve himself. Mother Nature. I can still remember the exact location he stopped at. It was on the left side of the road, with a white stone half veranda-like entrance to a farm or someplace. It had been raining the whole week, and the ground was very muddy and smelled moldy. I debated over getting out with him, but I thought that he would be not very impressed with me if I accompanied him on his errand. So, I gathered all the guts that I could muster and sat all alone in the car. I remember it being very cold. I could see my breath as I breathed out, but it might have been only because of the weather in that area. Nothing much happened in the time my brother was away, for one exception. There was the distinct sound of someone breathing, and no, not me. I made a point of breathing my breath, and I could still hear it. I sat there, waiting for my brother for at least 10 minutes that seemed like 10 hours, so afraid that I could not even get up the nerve to uncross my leg that was aching like crazy. He got back into the car and did not say a lot after that. He just asked me when we had picked up the man in the khaki clothes. I decided not to say or ask anything anymore. Things were just getting too weird for me. As we got off the intersection that goes onto the Pearl Road, as we get off the mountain pass, my brother suddenly started driving faster and faster. I told him to slow down, and he looked at me with this confused expression on his face and said that he's not speeding, that he's been driving 100 kilometers an hour the whole time because that's the speed limit in the new tunnel. At that point, I started crying and told him that we did not go through the new tunnel but over the pass and through the old tunnel. He smiled at me and said, "No, I distinctly remember us stopping in front of the new tunnel, picking up a young girl, driving through the new tunnel, and dropping off the girl after the toll gate." Things were just getting so confusing and weirder by the minute. I told him that it was impossible. I know for a fact that we drove over the mountain, and I related my whole experience to him. He would not believe me. Then, to prove to him that I was telling the truth, I told him to have a look at his boots and at the floor by his feet, and if there was mud, by what I was telling him is the truth. Now, he found mud on his boots all right, and on the carpet by his feet, but for the past 3 years, he's still keeping by the side of the story. How do you explain that? 2 people, 1 car, 2 drastically different stories. In the past few months, I had 2 experiences with ghosts. This past New Year's Eve, my grandfather died after a short illness. My family stayed over my grandparents' house the night before he died, and I slept in the upstairs bedroom. I couldn't really sleep for too long, and at one point, as I lay in bed, with my eyes slightly open, I began to see some sort of figure near my bed. I began to see what looked like a face and ran out of the room into the hallway. As I walked down the hallway, I was pushed by a burst of energy 2 times and walked at a greater speed than myself meant to. I can't really describe it, just that whatever it was actually passed through me 2 times. The second shelf left me in front of my grandfather's bedroom. I couldn't understand why, since my grandfather had been moved to the downstairs living room and no one was supposed to be in the room. However, an aunt of mine was laying in the bedroom floor, passed out, after getting too upset when entering his room, which no one in my family knew at this point. Shortly after, my grandfather died. My family feels that even though at this point he was still alive, his spirit had already left his body and directed me to check up on my aunt. After his death, I tried to put it out of my mind for a while. However, at the beginning of March, my mother and I visited my grandmother, and she asked me to carry up some boxes to the store in my grandfather's room. As soon as I entered the room, I started thinking about the whole situation with his death and could not stop crying. It was the first time that had really sunk in that he was gone and that I will never see him again. 3 days later, I went back to college, and about 1:30 a.m., after my roommate had gone to sleep, I, with my headphones, began listening to a CD of mine. I began thinking about my grandfather again, and soon, the doorknob to the dorm room began to shake, and I could hear someone fumbling around with it for a while. The windows were open, but there was no wind coming through. I went up to the door, figuring that it was someone on the floor stopping by. Then, the doorknob slowly turned and the door opened, and nobody was there, but I could feel a presence. I believe that this was my grandfather letting me know that although he has passed on, he is still watching over us. Over 30 years ago, I was a signalman in a quiet country box on a now closed Waverly route. I operated a level zing over a back road some 3/4 of a mile from the main road. On a November Saturday back shift, around 18 hours, because it was rather warm, I sat with some of the windows open. I'd left my gates blocking the roadway waiting for a train leaving Carlisle 6 miles away. Not many cars use the zing at weekends, so I was surprised to hear a sound from outside and down the road. I went to the window and looked out. There was nothing to see, so I made to turn away, at which point a voice called, "Can I come across?" Looking back out, I could see a person standing beside the wicket gates. I called back yes, and made to unlock the small gates. I returned to the window, and a girl had crossed the track and was standing at the fence below me. She was dressed in light colored, I guessed that tan, closed her hair, was fair, but her face was hidden in the shadow cast by the box eaves. We talked. She told me she had come out of a bus and was heading for a certain house where she was staying. As we began to talk, snow began to fall. I asked her to come up to the fire. She refused, as she refused to step closer to the fence. A bell rang behind me. I turned away and turned back, and she was gone. The road ran away straight for a good half-mile. I hurried downstairs, kneeling on the road. I could look along the tarmac, shiny and wet, reflecting lights of a marshalling road on the horizon. The road was empty. The following week, early shift, I made a point of stopping the people who lived at the house mentioned. No one had been visiting. It had already dawned on me that the bus she had mentioned no longer ran. I hope you find this of interest. Let me say that I worked at that box for some time after and loved every minute. Signal boxes are curious places, some odd by their locations, but all old and well used. Hello. Me and my boyfriend have had a couple of incidents at our apartment, leading us to believe that there is something here aside from us. I first of all think that it's strange that this is happening, as we live in an apartment complex. About 2 months ago, we were in bed and watching TV. We heard a child's voice in the living room, and this continued for several weeks on several different occasions. It seemed to be as if someone called out for someone. Then about a month later is when the really strange part of it took place. No one had been there at all, and the house was spotless, and we noticed a small handprint on our bathroom mirror. It was in the middle of the mirror and had water streaks running down from the top of the fingertips, as if it had just been done minutes earlier. And then this very morning, my boyfriend turned the shower on and went to the living room to watch TV until it warmed up. He said he noticed in the corner of his eye the bathroom door move, so he assumed I was in there. So he waited a couple more minutes, then went in to take his shower. As soon as he went in the bathroom, he plainly noticed a small handprint on the steamed up mirror and instantly ran in and woke me up to look at it. I went to look at it and I had chills. It was obvious to me it had just been made, not to mention I had just cleaned that mirror 2 days ago. The water streaks were coming down from everywhere on the handprint this time. The funny thing is that both incidents, it was only one hand, and only the right hand both times the prints were in almost the same area of the mirror. It seems to me it's a child-sized hand. The first incident, the print was slanted. The second instance, the print was perfectly straight. We ourselves are skeptical about this, but at the same time, open-minded to the fact that spirits do exist. There are no children ever here in this entire complex, and no other reasonable explanations. This is real. If anyone has any knowledge of these occurrences, please email. This may seem pretty benign compared to some of the stories I read on the prenatal haunting storyboard, but here's my story. I accidentally became pregnant in February 1999. I didn't discover I was pregnant until I was about 8 to 9 weeks along. My husband and I had not yet planned on having children, but we were so happy about the baby. When I was about 6 months pregnant, I had a dream, the likes of which I've never had, and have never had again. It was so real and vivid, I didn't even have to write it down. I can remember every detail to this day. My son was born in October 1999, so it wasn't really all that long ago. I dreamed I was sitting in front of my yard of my sister-in-law's new home. I'd not yet been to or ever seen a photo of my sister-in-law's new home, but upon visiting for the first time, after the dream, it was exactly as it appeared in my dream, even down to the potted plant she keeps on the porch. In my dream, I was sitting in a folded green lawn chair and was watching my 2 nieces play in front yard with jump ropes. I was holding a baby boy, and he was wrapped in light blue blankets. I had a section of the blanket over his face to shield him from the sunlight. I recall that he began making cooing noises, so I brought him off my shoulder and lay him in my lap. I uncovered his face and revealed the exact face that my real-life son has today. I saw my son's face before he was ever born, right down to the bright blue eyes. My husband has brown eyes, and I have blue eyes. It was assumed our son would have brown eyes. They tend to be dominant. However, he had bright blue eyes in my dream, and he has bright blue eyes in real life. My son cooed and babbled to me in my dream, and I remember saying to him in my dream, "I'm so glad you came to me. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." I said that exact same phrase the day he was born and had the strangest feeling of deja vu. I realized it was exactly what I'd said in my dream. Do you think this is a form of haunting? I saw exactly what my son would look like as a baby before he was born. Of course, seeing how it's a dream, and I'm not the only one who saw it, that could be debatable. But I was incredibly shocked when I saw him in real life for the first time, right after he was born, because it was exactly as he appeared in my dream, almost 3 months before his birth. A few years ago, about 1995, I went to a Christian summer camp in Big Bear. It was called Camp Cedar Crest. The girls in my church youth group were staying in the cabin, all the way in the back half of the camp, right on the boundaries. I'd heard the rumors that the cabin was haunted, but I figured that the people telling me these rumors were just trying to scare me. But after staying in the cabin the first night, I'd began to believe the rumors, because brushes that belonged to some of the girls would somehow fly across the room as if they had been thrown, but no one threw them. Also, the beds at night would shake vigorously, and I was unable to explain this to myself and come up with a rational explanation. No one else wanted to believe that the cabin was haunted. Then, when we left, I swore I would never set foot in the cabin again, but I wanted to know if it was haunted. So, 2 years later, I went again with my church, and a few of the girls and I went back to the place where the cabin should have been to see if it was boarded up or something, to show us that it was dangerous or haunted or something. But the cabin was torn down. There were 2 men working on the cabin with yellow police tape surrounding the cabin and the hill it sat on. The cabin was already half gone, and we watched as the men worked, and when we tried to ask them what they were doing, one of the men got off of his ladder and walked to the back of the cabin and vanished. When I turned to look at the people that were with me, their mouths hung open in fright, and when I turned back, the other man had vanished. We then went running, screaming into the church, and tried to tell one of the counselors, but no one believed us. To this day, we still don't know what we saw, and no one is willing to believe that they were ghosts. My name is Amber. I'm 15 years old, and I've never returned to that camp except for once. I have never returned to the site where I witnessed those men who mysteriously disappeared. I've told this story many times, but no one believes me. They all believe that my friends and I made it up to get attention. However, I know what I saw, and I've played it back many times in my mind, and every time I come to the same conclusion: the cabin was haunted, and the ghost didn't want the place to be torn down. In November of 1997, my wife and I went to the Whaley house for fun. She told me how the house was supposed to be haunted, but I thought she was just fooling with me to get a reaction. When we entered the house, the caretaker told us about the house, and I asked her if the house was really haunted, or if it was a bunch of BS. She told me that strange things did in fact happen, and then again, I thought it was just a bunch of hooey. Well, I can actually say that the house is weird. As I walked through the house, I had it in my head that nothing ever happened, and everyone made up stories about this particular house. Here's the good part. As I came to the study of Old Man Whaley, I started to smell smoke. I thought it was kind of weird, but then thought that someone outside was smoking. Then the smell got so intense that I almost started to cough. I turned to my wife and asked her if she smelled it, and she responded yes, and that it was strong. I decided to go on and see what else was in the house. The cigar smell followed me, and then, at that time, the caretaker said to me that Mr. Whaley didn't like me. I said to her that the cigar smell was just tremendous, and I couldn't take it. She told me, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, he don't like you. I could hear people upstairs, and I decided I'd go and ask them if they smelled the smoke. I started to go upstairs, and when I got halfway up the stairs, I got this outrageous chill that ran through my whole body. As I got all the way upstairs, there was nobody there. I also noticed that the footsteps had stopped too. I went back downstairs and told my wife that there was nobody up there, and as I told her, we could hear the footsteps start up again, and I went back up, and to my surprise, there was nobody there, but the rocking chair was barely rocking and stopped. That's when I thought that this was a little too weird, and went back downstairs and told my wife what I saw, and she thought I was lying. As we toured the rest of the house, there was nobody there except the caretaker, and as we were ready to leave, I told the caretaker what had happened, and she told my wife and I that that was pretty common, and she wasn't pulling my leg. At first, I didn't believe that the Waverly house is for real, but now I know it is so. I was skeptical, and I'm more of a believer now. Frequently, on our way to Pennsylvania from Florida, we stay in the Wayside Inn in Middleton, Virginia. Always a pleasant stay until our last visit. We stopped impromptu without reservations, and they were filled, except for room 14, which they hesitate to rent because it is supposed to be the haunted room. When they tell guests, few will stay in it. My husband and I are not die-hard ghost believers, and we said we would try to stay in room 14 as we love staying at the inn. All went well until about 2:30 a.m. I was reading in the sitting area, unable to sleep, when I heard pounding, very rhythm-like pounding, loud, lasting about 15 minutes before I heard someone downstairs in the lobby hollering and banging also. It sounded like someone was pounding a nail on the wall, which was odd at this hour, with the inn full of guests sleeping. The pounding stopped for about a half an hour, and I dozed off. The pounding started, waking me. I got up and heard more hollering and banging downstairs. Then the pounding stopped. It happened on and off, at longer intervals throughout the night. I couldn't imagine why all this noise would be allowed to go on at this hour, and almost called the desk to find out if the night clerk was alright. But it was late, and I hated to ring the phone. The noise stopped. I slept fitfully, waking on and off to thumping downstairs. In the morning, the clerk asked me if we had anything unusual to report about our stay in room 14. I said no, not really, only that the pounding I heard was strange at that hour of the night and that someone was hollering downstairs. She said the hollering and pounding downstairs was her banging on the door to tell the ghost in the cellar to stop chopping with his cleaver on the chopping block. She said he is a ghost at the end who used to cook meat or etc. That this happens frequently. When he is noisy, she has to bang on the cellar door and tell him to quiet down, that he is waking the guests. Usually this quiets him, that some nights he's noisier than others. Also, a waitress told me about one of the girls seeing a lady in a lavender gown walking through the dining room. The clerk told me a guest who was using room 14 went to her car and on the way back in, locked up in her window and saw a woman in a lavender gown looking out. The guest left. Guests in room 14 were reported to see a soldier in a uniform and a lady in lavender embracing in the window when guests were in the room. We need to stay there frequently on our way back and forth from Florida to Pennsylvania. After our experience in room 14, I'm not anxious to return. The cleaver chopping in the cellar door under our room was on the back stairway leading to the cellar, really disturbed me. I did not like the experience, although the other stays in other rooms were perfectly normal and very enjoyable. It is a gracious inn with a good dining room. The bar hasn't been changed since before Lincoln's time. It has an interesting past. What I've told you is only a few of the sightings. My information came from people who work at the Wayside Inn and from my own experience. El Dorado Canyon on the Colorado River, just above Hoover Dam. This was once the site of an early 20th century mining town. Legend has it that many miners keep their dogs at their claims for protection and also as a reliable food source in extreme times of need. These dogs were often then not brutally reared, so as to not tolerate even the slightest trespass by a stranger. When the mines finally ran dry and miners moved on to other workable areas, many of these dogs were either shot on sight, simply left behind, still chained as they were, and for the lucky ones, released to fend for themselves. For many years since, people have come out of this canyon with tales of sightings and in a very few of instances, terrifying accounts of actually being attacked or chased by these alleged ghost dogs while exploring various different mining or town sites in the area. Curious as to the validity of such tales, my brother and I made the decision to do a little exploring of our own. On the first few excursions, we found nothing, as was expected. However, on the last adventure, we stumbled on what we thought was just another anonymous shaft site. As we looked closer at the site, we noticed about an 8-foot severely weathered chain embedded into the rock wall at the entrance to the shaft. Well, curiosity got the best of both of us, and foolishly, we entered the shaft. There, we came upon the bones of what appeared to be those of a large dog. We decided to camp here, as the day was coming slowly to its end. A decision that later we would come to regret. The still desert night closed in as we had dinner and relaxed around our small campfire. We heard what we assumed were coyotes yipping and calling off in the distance. The atmosphere became thick and very uneasy. We now felt that we were being watched from a very close distance. What we thought was nighttime breeze now sounded more like panting or breathing of large dogs in close proximity. Then we heard the growling, grating, low, and hateful. The fall paws on the desert sand snow became apparent. They seemed to circle the campsite. We were surrounded. That's when the scratching started. It came from the area where the chain laid. That damn chain moved. It seemed to tug away from the rock wall, pulling harder and harder each time. We fumbled for our gear and stumbled to our feet. My brother shone the flashlight at the chain. There were scratch marks in the rock. There were what appeared to be bloodstains on the wall, seemingly where the unfortunate dog furiously clawed at the chain's base and the rock itself. The chain dropped, something brushed up against my leg, and I struggled to keep my balance. My brother caught me, and we ran like hell towards the car. The fall of canine footsteps and wild panting chased us all the way. I've never run faster in my life. On the road, heading out of the canyon, we were paced for a good 2 or 3 miles, at least, by what seemed to be a pack of wild strays. We made it home, and I will never forget the terror of being chased by this pack of spectral hounds. Never. Locals refer to them simply as the Hell Dogs of El Dorado Canyon.
March 12th, 1994. My 16th birthday. It was just a regular old birthday. A few friends came to my house for cake and ice cream, along with myself, my sister, and my 15-year-old cousin. We all had our cake and ice cream and decided to go to a movie. Having had my restricted license for a year at that point, I was all for it. This would be my first time driving a car after dark without an adult. Well, anyway, we all head to the local movie theater, which is about 20 minutes from my house. We go and watch our movie, then everyone starts heading home. My friend Melissa, my best friend Kevin, and I all piled into my mother's Crown Victorian and headed home. We were driving along, all three of us, in the front seat of the car, talking, laughing, and cutting up as most 16-year-olds do. The road we were driving down is called Pine Log Road. It's a pretty long road as it runs from Clearwater, South Carolina, through to Aiken, South Carolina. Probably about a 25-minute ride, if you are actually abiding by the posted speed limits. Well, anyway, we're riding along, laughing and cutting up, when I come to one portion of the road that is downhill, and at the bottom, a fairly sharp curve. This is one of the few spots on that road that are fairly well lit and that isn't in a populated area, due to the fact that just at the bottom of the hill and across the street is a concrete plant or something like that. Anyway, it's well lit. I was coming to the bottom of the hill, and all of a sudden, Melissa belts out a blood-curdling scream. I look back to the road and see a man walking dead center of the lane that I'm in. He was wearing an old army jacket, camouflage pants, and had a green hood pulled over his head. I, of course, swerved amongst Melissa, Kevin's, and my own screams, run off the road, and screeched to a halt. I realized that I had hit the man, and my heart sunk into my stomach. I just knew I had hit him. There was no way he got out of the way in time, and even though I swerved, my car went skidding sideways towards him. There was no way I got past him, or him past me. Melissa, Kevin, and I get out of the car and run back to where the man had been to see if he was okay, or if I'd killed him, or what. When we got to the spot, which was about 10 feet from where the car had stopped, he wasn't there. I felt relieved, but then my thoughts went in another direction. I knew I had hit him, and besides that, where was he? He wasn't still walking up the road. He wasn't in the road. He wasn't on the side of the road. I went back to the car and got my flashlight and started looking. The only place he could be was in the woods on the side of the road. Melissa and Kevin and I went into the woods. I mean, come on. I wasn't about to go in there alone, and started looking. We got probably about 20 feet into the woods when we all stopped where we were. Melissa turns to me and says, "Maybe we all just imagined it." And about the time she finished saying it, we heard a low moan. We all three took off in the direction of the moan, hoping to find the man, because if I had hit him, he was probably in need of some help. We all three keep heading towards the moan, but then we were back at the side of the road. We all stood quietly, hoping to hear it again, as maybe we just went in the wrong direction, and we heard it again, but this time it was louder, and it was in the woods again. We headed back in and kept heading towards the sound. We were calling out for him to keep talking so that we could find him, but the moans were all we heard from him. When we got to where he had been, after heading into the woods the first time, the moans stopped. At this point, we are all pretty freaked out, and none of us knew what to think. Melissa is getting really scared and is not bothering trying to hide it. And I must admit, so am I. We all agreed to go home and call for help because there was no one we could find. We all agreed to go home and call for some help because there was no way we could find the man alone. And as we turned around to head back, we saw the man standing at the edge of the woods beside the road. Of course, we all jumped 30 feet into the air, but when I shined the light on him, he was gone. I believe it was at that point that we all began running towards the car, using several different words that our mothers would not approve of. We got into the car and hightailed it to my house. I told my mother that night what had happened, and she smiled and said, "You didn't hit him." I didn't understand her smile or her saying that, so I asked her. She told me that she had heard of a couple of other people that claimed to have had similar experiences. She then said it was probably some drunk wandering and that we had just thought we saw him standing at the edge of the woods, just got caught up in the moment. So I just chalked it up to being that, an overactive imagination. I still believed it for a while after that, until I turned 19 and went to my local college. I met a girl there named Candace. Her older brother had a really bad car accident in the same spot when I was in middle school. He claimed that some man was walking down the center of the road, and he swerved to miss hitting him and flipped his Jeep. I never told Candace about it, and when I met her brother, I asked him about it. He described the guy that I thought I had hit. Same clothes, same disappearance. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a ghost. Maybe it was just an overactive imagination. Maybe someone slipped something into my drink at the movies. But if it was, why wasn't I the only one to have seen him, as I have heard other stories since then from other people, not to mention the other two people that were with me when I saw him? Why was there no man around when we went looking? I mean, the woods. We weren't in there especially deep or thick. In my personal opinion, there's no way that it was a man I saw there that night. There was no way he got out of the way fast enough, and to this day, I won't go down that road alone at night, and even during the day, I feel as though someone has walked over my grave when I pass that spot. Maybe you have a personal take on my story, could offer some insight. Maybe you have a personal take on my story, could offer some insight, or maybe just have some ideas on how I could find out more about what happened. Anything would be appreciated.
Hey everybody, welcome. And did you even think that I would even have a guest star on my show? It's an epic show of epic proportions. Everybody, give a round of applause for creepy blonde girl. Yeah! Woo, 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 woo. Okay, guys, that was like the lamest introduction I've ever given for anybody, but I'm sure she'll forgive me after I feature her in this video. But anyway, guys, thank you so much again for tuning into this very special video. I actually had Creepy Blonde Girl on because she's an amazing narrator, and you should definitely check her out because we talk, and that means a lot. So I guess that's something, right? Yeah, anyway, guys, go comment, like, share, and subscribe to her channel. Yeah, because that's how we do it up in these streets, right? No, but seriously, guys, comment, like, subscribe, share this video around, and remember, this person actually has their birthday today. So Creepy Blonde Girl, she is turning a certain age. I don't know if she wants me to reveal it, but we'll have to find out if she wants to. Anyway, guys, I don't even know what I'm saying. Guys, I'm desperate. I need your likes. I need your comments. I need your subscriptions because, you know, my channel will fail because you guys, I don't know. You guys love me, I guess. I mean, if my outros haven't already scared you off, then maybe you guys are still here because you love me. I don't know. I'm hoping because, you know, I'm desperate. Anyway, guys, no, I'm going to cut this out really quick, and I hope you guys really enjoyed this very long video. It's really long for me. I know other people do like hour-longs and 2-hour-long videos and stuff like that, but, you know, consider, you know, getting us to our goal of 10K subscribers and, you know, just, you know, comment below in the comment section below. I actually do think that, again, there are very good stories in here, so you might want to comment and just let me know how you feel about these stories. There's some really good ones. I really like the dog story. The birthday story was obviously cool too. You know, you got the hotel, the Waverly Inn, that pretty cool stuff. So, guys, I'm gonna sign out. Good night, good morning, and I will see you in the next video. Toodaloos.